Hey everyone, it's Dan, and I have a story to tell you that I have recently recalled just in the last week or so. And it's a pretty creepy story. And I'll get into more of why I forgot the story. But on my most recent video about the Sykesville Monster, which is basically a rash of Bigfoot sightings that happened in the small town of Sykesville, Maryland back in the 1970s, someone posted some information about the actor Thomas Jane, who was in The Mist, and he was in Boogie Nights and The Punisher. He was born here in Baltimore, where I was born and live. And him and his father used to go fishing a lot when he was a child. And when he was 8 years old, he was with his father, and he was at Pretty Boy Reservoir, which he refers to as Pretty Boy Lake, but it's actually Pretty Boy Reservoir. And he had a pretty startling experience there. And instead of me telling you about this experience, let me just play the audio from this interview he did on a podcast. Here it is right here.
I've had a couple of experiences. And one of them, I was about 8 years old, and me and my dad, we used to love to go fishing. We'd wake up at 4 a.m. and fish all day at some river or some lake. And we were at Pretty Boy Lake, which is in Maryland. It's either Virginia or Maryland. I think it's Maryland. And we were fishing, and it had gotten dark. Or no, it was just starting to get dark. And across the lake, sort of on the side of the lake, but way down, maybe 100 yards from us, we heard this incredible roaring sound. I don't even know how to describe it, but it was loud. It was an animal, and it was like nothing anyone had ever heard. There are no bears around in that part of the world, at least no bears that could sound like this. And then the trees started to break, and literally like trees would start cracking and falling over. And then that sound started getting closer to us. Something was trying to scare us away. It was a sound that I'll never forget. And my dad, who's a Vietnam vet and 6'3", I saw the color drain out of his face, and I thought, if he's scared, we're in trouble. And he grabbed our fishing gear and then grabbed me, so like an 8 or 9 year old kid, put me under his arm, and we ran out of that place with this incredible half human, half ape, sounding really pissed off, angry motherfucker breaking trees and marching in our direction. I'll never forget that. We still tell that story around the dinner table sometimes.
So the story I'm going to tell you just came back into my mind because at the time I never tied it to anything mythical or Bigfoot related. We didn't think about that at the time. This is going back to July or August of 1999 is when this happened. And it happened in the evening. It was late in the day. My friend contacted me and asked me if I wanted to drive up to Pretty Boy to go on a hike and do some swimming. Now, all of us in the city, all of us young people at the time, when it was hot and miserable, and that was, from what I recall, a pretty hot, miserable summer, going to Pretty Boy was like taking a plane trip to Hawaii. I mean, literally, it was, you get up there, you hike back to the rock, and you jump in, and it's like you're swimming in bottled water. I can't explain how nice it was, but it was absolutely beautiful. So on this particular occasion, my friend contacted me, said, hey, you got the new dog. I had just adopted a dog like a month before. His name was Bandit. And he was a 5-year-old Lhasa Apso mixed dog. And we decided to go up there, and I brought Bandit with me. So to get to where we were going, we were on 83 north out of the city, and you go up 83 until you get to the Hereford exit, which is Hereford, Maryland, which is just south of the PA line. And you head west, and you find a road called Tracy's Store Road. And you drive along Tracy's Store Road, and there's a gravel parking lot backed up into the woods where you can park and hike back into the forest that surrounds Pretty Boy Reservoir. So we got there, we got out of the car, hot, miserable, early evening. I think, if I remember correctly, it was about 6 o'clock when we got there. It seemed late, but it was like 6. It was still light outside. So we walked back in the woods, and there was a fire trail where they would bring, trucks and stuff if there's ever a forest fire. And you take this trail back, and in the middle of it intersects with another trail that goes off to the left, and we take the left trail and hike to the end of that. And then when you get to the end of that, you go down this very rocky, long hill, and you end up at a giant rock that just sort of slides into the water. So we would go to that rock and jumped in, and it just felt wonderful. And Bandit was having a great time. He was swimming, and it was a wonderful experience. I got out, and we hiked back up to the top. We were there for probably an hour. So at this point, it's in the 7 o'clock, somewhere in that range, between 7 and 8 o'clock in the evening. And the crickets, like the nighttime bugs, are starting to make their noises. And we got to the top of the trail and fused up some leaf and smoked some weed. It was a joint. We walked back to the... I thought we were going back to the car, and then my friend said, "Hey, let's take this other trail. We've never done that before." And I realized I'd never been down to the end of the other trail. So I said, "Okay, let's do it." So we walked down this trail. When we got to a certain point, there was a giant puddle, a mud puddle. There was a footprint in the mud next to the mud puddle that looked very strange. My memory serves me correctly. It looked like it was weird. It looked human, like it had toes. But my friend said, "That's bear." And my friend had grown up with a father who was a hunter. And so he knew about footprints and stuff. He said, "It's a bear print." It's just a weird looking footprint. And I don't even know if the footprint has anything to do with any of the things that happened after. But we walked past the puddle. We didn't really think anything of it because we were stoned. And we went to the end of the trail, and Bandit started going down the hill, so we followed him. We saw the top of the dam, and there's a dam there at Pretty Boy, and the water spills into the Gunpowder Falls river system. It was just beautiful. It was like a beautiful evening. The sun was going down. It was gorgeous. The woods were getting very dark, but the sky was still kind of lit up. So I think we smoked another joint. And then we walked up to the top of the hill, and we were walking back, and we got about 100 feet. And I would say, just to clarify, from where we were to the parking lot, I would guess would be about a mile, maybe a little bit more than a mile, but I think it was about a mile. It's kind of like where we were is like a point, and then beside the point is like what they call Pretty Boy Cove. It's just, the water just comes up to this point and into a cove. And the terrain is like hills or almost like mountains with the trails on top, and then going along the side where the hill goes down, and then you would go down the hill. There's hills on every side that go down to the water. It's heavily wooded, beautiful place, lots of wildlife, but we had never seen bear there. I've seen raccoon there, I've seen deer, I've never seen a bear. We are walking, we made it about 100 feet, and then we hear what sounded like a siren. That's the only thing we could compare it to. It sounded like a siren, like a like I know that's a terrible impression, but it sounded like a siren, and it was not far away. It was definitely between us and the parking lot, and it sounded like it was coming from down at the bottom of a hill, like next to the lake or the reservoir. So we just kind of looked at each other and we're like, oh, ha. And we thought maybe it was somebody hollering for their friend or something. We didn't know what it was. So we kept walking, and then we heard it again. This time it was lower. It was like a low kind of a moaning sound. And it lasted a little bit longer. I would say like 5-6 seconds. And it really sounded very eerie. So in my stoned mind, I am afraid that there's a bear, and it's all I can picture is this bear running up the hill and hurting my dog. That was the only thing I could think of. Bandit definitely noticed the noises and did not seem too thrilled to hear them. He started kind of crying a little bit and looking around. I picked Bandit up and I was holding him. I said, let's get out of here. And we're walking. And as we're walking off to the right, we could hear something in the woods, moving through the woods, almost perpendicular to where we were on the trail. It had gotten dark. So the sky was still kind of light, but the woods were dark. We were walking pretty quickly and briskly because I wanted to get out of there because I was afraid it was a bear that was going to attack us. We started hearing growling noises. The growling, it almost sounded like a cartoon, like this very exaggerated, ridiculous sounding growl, like almost like the cowardly lion in The Wizard of Oz. It was just a very strange sound. And we could hear whatever this was traveling through the woods next to us. It was following us. Whatever this thing, listen, I'm not going to sit here and say it was Bigfoot. We didn't see anything. We didn't see any shadows. We didn't see anything next to us in the woods. At one point, it was so close that if I had had a flashlight and run towards where it probably was, I probably would have seen what it was. We were scared. We were really scared. We got to the intersection where the trail that leads back to the swimming hole or whatever. And we kept walking. We're walking. I said, let's get the hell out of here. We walked a few more minutes, and then I saw car lights. And I was like, oh, thank God we're here. And whatever was in the woods, it had stopped following us. We didn't hear anything. The sound sort of stopped, especially when we got around the area where the little intersection was for the trails. We walked out to the parking lot, and we were just like so relieved to be out of the woods. We were just really happy, and it was dark, and there was a dude there in a pickup truck. Put Bandit in the car, and I gave him some water and some treats, and then we were just kind of chilling out, and I think we were smoking more weed. And we said hi to the guy in the truck. He said hi back, and He seemed, he wasn't like a creep or anything. He was just, I don't know what he was doing, but maybe he was going fishing or something. I don't know. But we're standing there, and all of a sudden we hear this very loud, long howl. That this moan, it just sounded very mournful. This like it just started up. It was I would say a quarter of a mile away, half a mile away, somewhere around there. And it was this long, sustained howl. And we just looked at each other like, holy shit, like what in the hell is that? And my friend said, maybe it's a coyote. And I said, yeah, but they more like do this like cackling thing other than howling. I mean, they do howl, but it doesn't sound so low and mournful. And that man in that truck, he looked at us and he said, what the hell was that? I said, we don't know. And then we told him about how we went back there and we had been, some animal was probably chasing us through the woods. He looked genuinely spooked. He said, he's like, I've been living up here since I was a kid. He's like, I've never heard anything like that before. I said, well, what do you think it is? And he's like, I'm not going to say. Like, you fellas have a good night. Be safe. And he left. And then when he left, I was like, I don't want to stand here in the parking lot but in the dark. I said, I want to go. So we got in the car and turned the engine on, and we sat for a little bit to see if we could hear the sound again, and we didn't hear anything. We ended up peeling out of there probably around 10, maybe 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. We left. I had relayed the story to some people, but it was perceived danger. It wasn't, we didn't see a bear. We didn't see whatever was in the woods kind of stalking us. And I say that because that's what it felt like and what it seemed like, but I'm not really sure if that's what was going on. All I know is that when we got to a certain point on the trail, it stopped stalking us, or stopped the sounds of something walking through the woods, which at one point, at a couple points, I stopped and I told my friend to stop and listen. And it sounded like somebody on 2 feet. Now, can I verify that? No, I can't verify that it was somebody on 2 feet. But it certainly sounded like 2 feet, not 4. It just sounded like a person. There was a couple moments where I'm like, it's some, jerk off like in the woods making these noises to scare us. We didn't see a person, and there were no cars out on Tracy Store Road in the parking lot. There was nothing, nobody out there. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. All I do know is that it is so similar to the Thomas Jane story that it's almost frightening. I don't remember hearing limb snapping or anything like that. I just remember the howling and the moaning sound and something basically walking in the woods perpendicular to where we were walking and following us. And it was dark, so we couldn't see anything. I mean, we were back there without a flashlight. We didn't plan on staying that late, but when you're stoned, you really don't give a shit. You're like, oh, this will be fun. You know what I mean? It was quite an experience. We definitely did not feel welcome, nor did we feel safe, which any other time up there, I had never felt unwelcome or unsafe. And even since I've gone up there with friends and gone swimming, and I've never had any problem, never felt scared, never even thought about that incident that happened, which was, incredibly like 26 years ago. I just didn't remember it. And then the Thomas Jane story on the podcast and him talking about, like Bigfoot or whatever, it really hit me. And that whole incident came up in my head. I'm like, oh shit, I remember when I was carrying Bandit and worried that the bear was going to kill us. And so maybe it was something else. Maybe it wasn't a bear. Maybe it was a Bigfoot. I don't know. I can't sit here and say for sure what it was because I didn't see an animal or a Bigfoot or anything. I just heard some animal sounds that I don't, at the time, questioned whether they were even animal. I thought maybe it was a person doing it. They were just very strange sounds, and unlike anything I'd ever heard before or since. I've never heard sounds like that. So yeah, that's it. That's the story. I'm open to hearing your opinion. No, the Film It channel is not going to turn into Bigfoot Central. It's just something I'm toying around with and think is fun. I've always found mythical creatures and UFOs and ghosts and stuff like that. I've always found this topic fun to delve into from time to time. I don't know. I'm interested to hear your opinions. And if you have any questions, just put them in the comments. And I will do my best to answer them. Make sure you follow me on Patreon at patreon.com/thisisdanbell. And you can also buy prints at thisisdanbell.com. Thank you for listening.